Hi, my name is Danielle Marsh. I'm 34 years old, and there's something I've been carrying around for almost a decade that I need to put somewhere. So I'm putting it here. My mom chose a man over me. Not once, not by accident, she chose him. Over and over. Every birthday I spent alone wondering if she'd call. Every phone call she cut short because he was waiting. Every holiday where his comfort came before my tears. She chose him, and she kept choosing him, and for a long time I told myself she just didn't fully see what she was doing. That she was in love, and love makes people blind. Then I found out what Gary had been doing behind all of our backs. And that's when I understood. She wasn't just choosing him over me. She was letting him take everything. Our family, her savings, her future. 22 years of working double shifts and saying no to vacations and nice things. Gone. All of it. Gone. The worst part isn't even that. The worst part is that by the time she came back to me, there was nothing left. Not a dollar. Not a relationship she hadn't burned through. Not a single place to go except my porch steps, sitting in the dark, crying into her hands, asking me if I still loved her. If you've ever had a parent choose someone else over you, you already know how complicated that question is. Let me go back, because none of this lands right without the beginning. Growing up, it was just the three of us, me, my mom Linda, and my little brother Tyler. My dad left when I was 9. I'm not saying that for sympathy. I'm saying it because I need you to understand what my mom became to me after that. She was everything. She worked double shifts at a hospital billing office 5 days a week. She made my Halloween costumes by hand, with a sewing machine she bought secondhand and learned from a library book. She drove Tyler to soccer practice and picked me up from debate club on the same night, every single Tuesday for 4 years, somehow without ever being late to either. She was exhausted in the particular way that single mothers who love their kids are exhausted, stretched thin, sometimes short-tempered, running on fumes, but always showing up. Our house was small, a 2-bedroom rental in Columbus. We shared a bathroom and a wall so thin I could hear her crying sometimes at night, after hard days. I never said anything. I didn't know how to be 12 years old and tell my mother I could hear her grief through the drywall. But we were close, really close. I told her things I didn't tell my friends. She was the first person I called when I got into Ohio State. I still remember, she screamed so loud she scared the dog halfway across the house. Tyler and I grew up knowing what she'd given up for us. We didn't take it lightly. That's what made what happened later so gutting. Because we didn't just lose a stepfather, we lost her. My mom met Gary when I was 23. I was living across town with my college roommate, working my first real job at a marketing agency. Tyler was a sophomore at Ohio State. One Sunday she texted me, "I met someone at church. His name is Gary. He brought me coffee." I smiled at my phone. I remember that. She hadn't dated anyone seriously since my dad left. 14 years of pouring herself into us and that job, and here was someone bringing her coffee at church. She deserved that. She deserved something soft and uncomplicated. I met him 6 weeks later at Sunday dinner. He was charming, not in a way I can pick apart now with hindsight. Genuinely charming, in the moment, to a 23-year-old who wanted her mother to be happy. Probably 55, salt and pepper hair, easy smile, solid handshake. He called my mom Linda Lou, and she giggled in a way I hadn't heard since before my dad left, and I thought, okay, this is fine. This is actually sweet. He had stories. He'd lived in 4 states, commercial real estate, semi-retired. He asked about my job without being condescending about it, which sounds like a low bar, but you'd be surprised how rarely men his age cleared it. Tyler liked him immediately. Tyler is easier than me. He gives people the benefit of the doubt the way I give them the benefit of suspicion. I had a feeling. Nothing I could name. Just the way his eyes moved around our mother's house when he thought no one was watching. Slowly, methodically, like he was taking stock of something, like he was pricing the room. I told myself I was projecting, that I was the daughter who'd seen her mother hurt before and couldn't let herself believe in something good. I wish I had trusted that feeling. I wish I had trusted it from the very first dinner. They got engaged 9 months after they met. My mom called me. I congratulated her, and I mostly meant it. I asked, carefully, if she felt sure about the timeline. "Danny," she said, "when you know, you know." I let it go. The wedding was small, 20 people, a garden venue outside Columbus, Tyler walking her down the aisle while I stood at the front in a pale green dress she'd picked out. I was the maid of honor. I gave a toast that made people cry in the good way. I hugged Gary at the reception and told him to take care of her. He patted my shoulder. "She's in good hands now," he said. Now, I didn't catch it that night. I was holding a champagne flute and genuinely smiling. But I've come back to that word 1,000 times since, because in one syllable he managed to say, "Before me, she wasn't." The first real sign came about 4 months after the wedding. I called her on a Thursday evening like I always did. She picked up but sounded distracted, muffled somehow, like she was in another room. And then I heard Gary's voice in the background, too low to make out words. Just a tone, just a presence. "I have to go, Danny. Gary and I are about to watch something." We'd been on the phone 8 minutes. "Okay," I said. "Call me tomorrow?" Of course. She didn't call the next day. Or the day after. I texted. She replied in fragments, short sentences, emojis, one-liners. I told myself she was adjusting. People do that in new marriages, especially when they've been alone as long as she had. I told myself it would even out. It didn't even out. The calls got shorter, dinners got further apart, and when we did get together, Gary was always there, always at the center, always quietly steering. He'd make a comment about how the restaurant was a little much, and my mom would nod. He'd mention that Tyler and I were welcome to visit, as long as it worked with their schedule. Their schedule. She used to rearrange her hospital shifts around us. Now we needed to book time like an appointment. Tyler noticed, but didn't want to push. "She's happy, Danny. Let her be happy." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. About a year into the marriage, Gary started making comments about money. Subtle at first. Her finances weren't as organized as they could be. She had too much in savings that was just sitting there doing nothing. He started talking about investments, properties, opportunities. The language of it was always gentle, always helpful sounding. My mother had not been reckless her whole life. She'd spent 22 years being careful. Not wealthy, not even comfortable by most definitions, but careful. She had about 60,000 in savings, some retirement accounts she'd been building since her late 20s, and she'd paid off the house. The house Tyler and I had grown up in. The house she'd owned for 17 years. Gary convinced her to sell it. He said they needed to start fresh in something that felt like theirs, not hers from before. He found a townhouse 30 minutes away. In his name, with his financing. My mom put in 40,000 of her savings as the down payment. I found out when she texted me a photo. I called her immediately. "Mom, whose name is the house in?" A pause. "Gary's. But it's ours, Danny. We're married." "Did you talk to a lawyer before you signed?" Longer pause. "Gary said it was fine. He handles these things." "Mom, Danielle." Her voice went flat. That was new. That flatness, like a door closing. "I'm an adult. I don't need you questioning every decision I make." "I know. I just want to make sure you're protected." "Gary says you don't like him. He says you've never really accepted us." I remember the exact feeling in my chest when she said that. Like the floor had tilted. "That's not true," I said. He says the way you ask questions is a form of control, that you want to control me the same way your father did. My father. Gary had said that. He'd taken the man who'd abandoned us, the wound my mother had spent 14 years quietly healing around, and he'd handed it back to her about me, her daughter, the one who stayed. I didn't say what I was thinking. I said, "Mom, I love you. I just want to make sure you're protected." I am protected. Gary protects me. She got off the phone 3 minutes later. I sat in a parking lot and cried for 20 minutes. Not the sad kind of crying, the disoriented kind. The kind where you're not just heartbroken but confused, because the person who has known you your whole life suddenly sounds like someone you've never met. Over the next 2 years, my mother disappeared. Not all at once. That's what made it so hard to argue with. It happened in layers, slowly enough that each individual shift seemed survivable. She stopped coming to Thanksgiving, Easter, the work promotion dinner she'd promised to attend. There was always a reason. Gary had a cold. Gary had plans. Gary needed her home. Tyler brought his girlfriend Priya to meet Mom. Gary spent the whole dinner asking Priya pointed questions about her family and her faith, with that easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. My mom sat next to him and nodded along and said nothing. Tyler called me after. His voice was careful in a way I hadn't heard from him before. That was really uncomfortable. That was when I started keeping notes. I know how that sounds. But when you're living inside something like this, when every person around you says you're overreacting, when you start to doubt your own memory, you need evidence just to stay grounded. Phone calls under 10 minutes, 17 in 1 month. Dinners canceled last minute, 8 in 6 months. Times Gary's name came up negatively in things she relayed to me. I stopped counting at 12. He had convinced her, piece by piece, that Tyler and I were the problem, that we were jealous, that we were draining her, that healthy adult children didn't need their mother so much. And she believed him. She believed him over us. Then one night she called and told me, quietly, like she was sharing something private, that Gary thought it would be good if she took some space. From the kids. Just for a while. He said she'd been giving too much of herself away. I said, "Mom, Tyler and I are your kids." She said, "I know, but I have a husband now." And that was it. 6 months of near silence. Texts that came back as one word. Calls she'd answer once a week if I was lucky. Her voice pleasant and distant, like she was reading from a script someone else had written for her. It was the loneliest I'd felt since I was 9 years old, sitting against that thin bedroom wall, listening to her cry and not knowing what to say. While we were on the outside looking in, Gary was busy. We didn't know it then. We pieced it together later, the way you piece together a crime scene, backwards, from the damage outward. Over 3 years, he had systematically restructured my mother's financial life. Her savings accounts moved into joint accounts he controlled. Her 403(b), 22 years of retirement contributions, cashed out. The early withdrawal penalties alone were thousands of dollars. She never mentioned it. He convinced her to put $60,000 into a real estate partnership with friends of his. No protective paperwork. No LLC. A handshake deal with men she'd never met. He borrowed $30,000 from her directly, signed a note, he said, but he kept it, and she never made a copy. He opened a credit card in both their names and ran it up. Her credit score dropped 40 points in 18 months. She didn't know all of it. Or she knew pieces and believed his explanations for each piece. And here's the thing I've had to sit with for a long time, she never told us. Not because she was naive. My mother is not a naive woman. But because she was ashamed. Because somewhere under the love and the denial, she knew something was wrong, and telling us would have meant admitting we'd been right. Gary had spent years making sure that option felt impossible. Coming to us with a problem would mean weakness. Would prove him right about us. Would hand us ammunition. He'd built a trap out of her pride, and he kept her in it. Tyler called me at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. "Danny, Mom called me. Gary left." I sat up in bed. "What?" She came home from work and his stuff was just gone. Half the furniture, his car, everything. I was already pulling on a sweatshirt. We drove to the townhouse, Gary's townhouse, and found her sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. Work clothes still on. Cold cup of coffee in both hands. When she looked up and saw us in the doorway, something broke loose in her all at once. Her whole body started shaking, the way bodies do when they've been holding on for too long, and suddenly don't have to anymore. Tyler went down on his knees in front of her chair and took her hands. I turned on a lamp. Someone had to. "He took the banking app passwords," she said. "I can't get in." I went to her laptop. The accounts were closed. Her savings account, closed. Balance at closure, 0. Her retirement statement was in a kitchen drawer. She'd cashed it out 17 months ago. Gary had taken her to the bank. She'd signed the paperwork. The townhouse, Gary's name on the title. She wasn't on it. No legal claim. The investment, an email chain led nowhere. The partners weren't responding. By noon the next day we had the full picture. My mother, who had worked double shifts for 22 years, who had said no to vacations and new clothes and time for herself, who had given everything to us, and then everything to him, had nothing. I had to go to the bathroom and run cold water over my wrists until I could breathe again. I needed a minute where no one could see my face. The weeks after Gary left were the hardest of my adult life. Not because of my own grief. I'd been grieving my mother for years by then, slowly, in private. This was different. This was logistics and fury, and watching someone you love face the wreckage of choices they'd made while you were locked outside. We hired an attorney. Tyler and I split the cost. The picture wasn't clean. Some of what Gary did was legally gray. Joint accounts, she'd signed everything. The retirement fund, her decision, on paper. The investment, civil fraud was possible, but Gary had covered himself carefully. A few things had real traction. The credit card debt in both names, potential financial abuse argument. The loan note, a civil claim was possible. But the attorney was honest with us. Gary likely didn't have the money anymore. Winning and collecting were two different fights. My mom filed a police report anyway, for the record. Because it happened, and it should exist somewhere that it happened. I want to say something here, because I've thought about it a lot. There's a version of this story where my mother gets treated like she was foolish. Like she should have known. Like there's something almost complicit about letting it happen. And I want to be clear, my mother was none of those things. She was a woman who had been exhausted and lonely for a long time, and someone very skilled at finding that found her. That's not stupidity. That's being human at a moment of vulnerability. But I won't pretend I wasn't angry. Because I was. I'd seen it. I'd tried to warn her. I'd been pushed away and called controlling and compared to my father. I'd spent years missing her while she was alive, and now I was sitting in an attorney's office figuring out how to rebuild what was left of her life. Tyler forgave her within 24 hours. He was holding her hand and telling her it would be okay before I could even look at her without something hot rising in my chest. I needed more time. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. We found Gary about 4 months later. He hadn't gone far, a town in Kentucky. A mutual contact from his old church spotted him posting in a local Facebook group under a slightly different name. Same face, same smile. The attorney made contact through proper channels. Gary denied everything. The joint accounts were by her choice. The money was household expenses. The loan had been repaid in kind through contributions to the marriage. Textbook. But when the attorney dug into his past, they found a woman named Patricia, Indiana, 12 years before he met my mom. She'd filed a civil suit after their relationship ended. Settled out of court. Same pattern, different woman. Tyler called her. She was 61, living outside Indianapolis. When he explained who he was, she said, "I've been waiting for that man to show up in someone else's life for years." She had documentation. She was willing to testify. The civil case took 14 months. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow and grinding, and there were moments my mother wanted to drop it. The shame of it being public felt unbearable to her sometimes. But she didn't drop it. Tyler and I made sure of that. Gently. Persistently. Showing up every time she started to waver. In the end, the judgment went in her favor. Gary ordered to repay $62,000, a portion of what he'd taken, limited to what could be proven. He didn't have most of it liquid, so his wages would be garnished. His credit damaged. And there was now a public, searchable, legal record that Gary Richard Colton had defrauded a woman in Ohio. It wasn't everything. It wasn't the retirement fund or the compounded growth of 22 years of careful saving. It wasn't the house we grew up in. But watching him sit in that courtroom in his slightly too nice suit, his composure starting to fracture when the judgment was read aloud. That was enough. That was genuinely enough. The day after the judgment, my mom called me. Not Tyler. Me. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Old reflex, giving myself one breath before engaging. I'd learned to do that. "Danielle," she said. "Hi, Mom. I want to come see you, if that's okay." I looked out my kitchen window. Gray February morning. My coffee going cold. My cat sitting in a strip of weak sunlight on the counter, doing absolutely nothing in that committed way cats do. "Come Saturday," I said. She showed up an hour early. Green coat I didn't recognize. Second-hand, I found out later, because most of her nicer things had been in the townhouse when the management company changed the locks. I made tea. We talked about small things. Tyler's new job, the weather, the temporary position that had come through at the hospital. And then she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. Really looked at me. "I need to say something," she said, "and I need you to let me finish before you respond." I nodded. She took a breath that seemed to start somewhere deep. "I chose him. I know that. Every time there was a choice between you and him, I chose him. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I was just swept away, that it wasn't really my fault. I chose to believe him over you. I chose to push you away when you were trying to help me. I told you that you were like your father." Her voice broke on that last part. "I told my daughter, who never, not once, treated me the way your father did. I told her she was just like him. Because Gary told me to. Because I wanted to believe that what we had was real." She pressed her lips together for a moment. "I was lonely," she said, quieter now. "I was so tired and so lonely for so long, and he made me feel like I mattered. And I let that be more important than you. I let it be more important than my daughter, who drove across the city and turned on a lamp in that kitchen while I fell apart. And I'm sorry, Danielle. I'm so sorry. I don't even know if you should forgive me. I don't know if I've earned it." I had rehearsed this moment so many times in my head. I'd imagined being measured and clear. I'd imagined saying, "You put me through a lot," in a controlled adult voice. Instead, I just started crying. Not the dignified kind. Real crying, the embarrassing kind, where your face forgets what it's doing. My mom got up and came around the table and put her arms around me, and I let her. I just let her hold me. Like I was 9 years old. Like I was just her daughter who missed her, not a grown woman who'd spent 5 years feeling like an orphan with a living mother. We sat like that for a long time. I couldn't say it's okay, because it wasn't, not fully, not yet. But I said, I'm still here. She held on tighter. That was enough for that day. It's been just over 2 years since that morning. My mom is doing something I honestly wasn't sure I'd ever see. She's building herself back up. She's back at the hospital billing office full-time, a position that came with a small pension. She has her own apartment now, her name on the lease, nobody else's. It's smaller than anything she had before. She has plants on the windowsill, and a second-hand couch she reupholstered herself with a YouTube tutorial and a staple gun. She sent me a photo when she finished it. It genuinely looks good. She should be proud of it. Last fall, Tyler got engaged to Priya. My mom called me right after he told her. She was crying, the good kind, the overwhelmed kind. He asked me if I was happy, she said. Before he told me anything, Tyler asked if I was happy. How is that boy so good? You made him that way, I told her. You made both of us. She got quiet for a second. Then, I almost threw you both away. But you didn't, I said. I meant it. There are still complicated days. Days when something triggers a flare of old anger. When I think about her retirement fund, about the house she sold, about those years of unanswered calls. That anger may never fully disappear. I've stopped waiting for it to. Grief for what could have been isn't something you set down. It's something you learn to carry differently. But when I think about who my mother is, the whole of who she is, I choose her. I choose this relationship, rebuilt from wreckage, imperfect and real. Not because she earned it. Because I do. Because I deserve to have my mother. Because she deserves to know her daughter still loves her. And because carrying rage forever would only burn me down, and I've got better things to do with the heat. Gary, as far as I know, is out there somewhere doing what he does. The garnishment is active. The record follows him. I hope the next woman Googles his name before she lets him bring her coffee. I hope she finds it. I'm posting this because I've seen so many stories about estranged parents, and they always seem to skip the messy middle, the part where you're furious and heartbroken and still driving across town to help the person who hurt you, at the same time, on the same night. It doesn't fit a clean redemption arc. It doesn't fit a cut them off story either. It's something more uncomfortable than both, the specific pain of loving someone who let you down in ways you never expected, and choosing them anyway, on your own terms, slowly. If you're somewhere in the middle of that right now, a few things I want you to hear. You're not wrong for being angry. Even if the person who hurt you is also a victim, you can hold both of those truths. Your feelings don't have to be logically consistent. You're allowed to grieve what you lost, while also having compassion for how it happened. Financial abuse is real, and it doesn't always look like obvious theft. Sometimes it looks like one partner managing the finances. Like moving accounts for efficiency. Like one person making every financial decision while the other one trusts them, because love and trust can look identical until they don't. If someone is systematically removing your financial autonomy, even with love in their voice, especially with love in their voice, pay attention to that. Tell someone. Don't wait until there's nothing left. And rebuilding a relationship after something like this isn't about going back. You don't go backwards. You go sideways, and then maybe forward. Into something new. Something honest about the scars, something that accounts for what happened. That kind of relationship can be real, and it can be good. But it takes time that doesn't follow anyone else's schedule. My mom and I have dinner every other Sunday now. She brings salad. I cook whatever I find in the fridge. We talk for 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes we talk about Gary. Usually, we don't. Last Sunday, she told me about a coworker who just started dating someone new after a divorce. I told her to Google him first, my mom said. Get a prenup. Keep her own accounts. I laughed hard enough to knock over my water glass. She laughed too. It's not the relationship we had before any of this. But it's ours, chosen, every time, by both of us. Knowing exactly what it cost. I think that means more than what we had before. I really do. If you made it this far, thank you. If any of this sounds like your life, leave a comment. I read them. Sometimes just knowing someone else has been in the messy middle makes the difference. Take care of yourselves, for real. You're worth more than you think.